Senator Mike Lee from the beautiful state of Utah joins us now, and he also has a brand new book out today, Saving 9, The Fight Against the Left's Audacious Plan to Pack the Supreme Court and Destroy American Liberty. Senator, we're so glad for your time today. I know it's busy. You guys are all back in session. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the legislation that is being proposed. I know Senator Lindsey Graham has a bill that he's been working on with Senator Blumenthal, and they're looking at possibly red flag laws, or I know some others are proposing raising that age. I wanted to get your thoughts on this as you all are starting this monumental effort to discuss this and see what's going to come of it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show, Dana. And yeah, whenever something like this happens, it's tragic, it's heartbreaking. My heart breaks for all those affected by these things. We do have to remember that by the time a mass shooting occurs, many laws have been broken. In many instances, it's dozens of laws that have been broken. I think we do have to be mindful of the impulse that's often incorrect to go and pass another law in response to the violation of dozens of laws. All of that said, look, we understand that there are problems happening. There are reasons why some of these people, often young men, are sinking into this state of isolated despair and sometimes carrying out horrific acts. I think it's important for us to understand why they do those things and what warning signs people around them can learn from in order to stop them. But whenever we do this, we have to be very careful that we don't respond in such a way as to punish the law-abiding. That would be bad for public policy, especially keeping in mind that very often what stops a mass shooting, what interrupts the mass shooter, is a person exercising his or her Second Amendment rights by carrying a weapon.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We saw that in the Clackamas Mall shooting, where there was a concealed carry permit holder that intervened there. Sutherland Springs was another. Talking with Senator Mike Lee on this, and that's kind of the issue. There were in all of these cases, sadly, these killers were known to law enforcement. In Parkland, we discovered, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School Safety Commission discovered that in the days, weeks, and months after that, not only had police visited this killer's home, 40 some odd times, but his behavior had been reported, and not just his behavior, but the behavior of other students who were engaged in criminal activity that was serious enough to be classified as a felony. And yet none of this stuff was being reported to authorities, and there was this intent to reduce that school to prison pipeline. And it seems that many of these school officials think that simply by not reporting increased violence or escalation of violent behavior, that we're reducing crime because we're not reporting it. We saw that in Florida. In Uvalde, apparently this person was known to police. Students and classmates were aware of escalating violent behavior. He was sending rape and death threats to women online. But yet nothing was done, and then everyone talks about red flag. Talk to us a little bit about this. What happened to the see something, say something that we all heard about in the years after 9/11?
Yeah, apparently we're being told to look the other way now and not say anything, and instead curtail the rights of the law-abiding, which makes little sense to me. There is not a good reason that I can think of, not another analogy, where we tend to think this way as a matter of public policy. I feel sometimes like people who are advocating for more stringent gun laws, looking for an excuse to ban a particular type of firearm, a firearm commonly held by law-abiding persons, good, free citizens for lawful purposes. People who are trying to take away guns from the law-abiding very often are like a person carrying around a hammer to whom everything starts to look like a nail, and even when it's harmful to do so. And I think that's dangerous, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate indeed. Talking with Senator Mike Lee, if Lindsey Graham is able, this red flag law proposal that I had mentioned, if this is something that comes forward as a vote, would you oppose this legislation, or do you find anything in there that you support?
I haven't seen his legislation. From what I know of it, I couldn't support it insofar as you're taking away a constitutionally protected right from a person without pre-deprivation due process, without judicial review and an opportunity to present evidence in one's defense. I can't support that. I can't support that because the Constitution can't. The Fifth and the 14th Amendments contain due process clauses. saying that you can't deprive someone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process of law means review by a court with fair procedures in an appropriate time frame before the liberty interest is removed from you. And so I can't support something that doesn't afford that basic constitutional minimum.
Yeah, and it's important to note too, in all these, there's a number of states that have these, and they still see these horrific crimes that take place. California, Colorado, New York, with Buffalo. Is it fair to say, Senator, that firearms in the diminishment of due process as it relates to red flags, that firearms are a variable, that this breakdown of due process could also be applied to other cases that don't involve firearms?
Oh, sure. Look, this is a very slippery slope, Dana. If we start taking away constitutionally protected rights and conditioning them on the whim, the caprice of an individual government official without pre-deprivation due process in a court of competent jurisdiction, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. I mean, we would never dream of doing this with regard to First Amendment rights, at least not yet. We start with the Second Amendment. Who else knows where else it could turn? It's very, very concerning. Look, we know that things like this tend to happen more. People tend to take encouragement from getting publicity. Even the shooter who knows or believes that he will die or intends to die in the attack often appears to crave the publicity. Why are we giving them so much publicity in advance? Mm-hmm. Now, I understand there are First Amendment protections at stake, and so there's probably not anything that we can do constitutionally about that. But as a matter of prudence and caution, I would think some of the media companies that give so much publicity to these mass shooters might want to reconsider that strategy.
One last quick question on this, and I want to ask you about the formula, and then also we got to talk about your book as well, because all of this plays into the Supreme Court. If people are unhappy, if Democrats are unhappy with the Supreme Court's decisions, they want to pack the court. Is there the question that I started with Cornyn, or the issue that we started our segment with? I am unaware of any laws that would prevent juvenile records from carrying over if it's a serious felonious activity. Can you give any clarification or an enlightenment for us on that? Because that seems to be an issue where all of these people had juvenile records, but yet you turn 18. Uvalde, we don't know. Apparently that was sealed. Is that something that you think could be looked into as a way to at least establish some kind of record for dangerous individuals?
Yeah, so we've identified certain categories of people who should not have a gun. Convicted felons are sort of chief among them. People who have been convicted of a misdemeanor of domestic violence are also on that list, as are people who have been adjudicated mentally defective or institutionalized to a mental institution. But in the event that you're dealing with juveniles, apparently there's some indication that juvenile records in many, if not most, state court proceedings are being sealed. So even if they might be felony level crimes that were convicted, where the individual was convicted, to the extent they're being sealed, they might not ever make it onto the next list, meaning they might not ever be identified as someone on par with a convicted felon who, as a convicted felon, can't be allowed to purchase or even possess a firearm. So yeah, if there are holes in that, I think we ought to look into it. I think that's a relatively easy problem to remedy. If in fact we've got a category of convicted felons who are being allowed to circumvent the express command of the law, yeah, I think that's a gap we could fill. I haven't verified exactly how that works yet, but I'm happy to look into that one.
Yeah, I would love to see how that could be possible, because it seems that would be the obvious route to take, as opposed to punishing every law-abiding 18 to 21-year-old. It's a very weird debate to have, because we're ultimately arbitrarily determining the age for adulthood. But it's so inconsistent with, you can vote here, you can serve your military here.
It seems very strange to me that we would tell someone that we can draft you. Yeah. Not only can you go into the military, but we can draft you and conscript you into military service involuntarily. But you can't buy a gun at that age. It seems
it's
that we ought to
very
pick a
odd
horse
indeed.
and fight it.
Yeah,
let's make it consistent. Now, I don't see the need to change it, but if it's going to be changed, let's change everything.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Talking with Senator Mike Lee. Okay, so the formula issue, when you mentioned easily solved problems, I'm not quite sure why we needed the theater of the president getting military planes to bring formula over from Europe when, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, it's that we're just disallowed from importing formula from Europe based on which seem to be some questionable FDA standards. I know you've been talking about this and you have plans to address it. Tell us a little bit more about how easily this whole issue could be resolved.
Yeah, Dana, there is no natural formula shortage. This entire shortage is of government's own creation. The federal government did this, first by imposing protectionist trade policies to keep these things out. Secondly, by putting unreasonable labeling requirements such that it makes it virtually impossible to sell European formulas that are just as healthy as ours inside the United States. Finally, the way the WIC program is administered, very often it makes it impossible for you to buy any type of formula with a WIC voucher, except for that specific formula listed on the voucher. Wow. My bill, the Formula Act, would suspend all three of these problems for at least 6 months. And by so doing, it would bring about an end to this crisis. This is an easy one to fix. We tried to pass it. I think we're going to get it done, but it's taking some time. More time than it should because Democrats are objecting to it.
Yeah, it was just so odd to watch Karine Jean-Pierre at the regular White House press briefing, and they're talking, well, we've asked United Airlines to bring formula over, and we have shipping companies that do that, and we could do it easily.
We do. I mean, do you know how many thousands of these commandeered military flights he would have to take in order to do it? But as you say, the free market will take care of this. If only the federal government will allow it to happen. That's all they have to do.
Yeah. Your book, Saving 9, The Fight Against the Left's Audacious Plan to Pack the Supreme Court and Destroy American Liberty. I can think of few people that are in a better position to write this book than you with your understanding. I remember when people were talking about filling the Supreme Court and nominating, this was during Amy Coney Barrett, everyone kept saying, Senator Mike Lee, I did not want you to go in the Supreme Court because I wanted you in the Senate. I did not want to lose you in the Senate. And you have a great understanding of this. This is a great book, and I started reading it. It's out today. Tell us a quick thing about it, and congrats on it too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. You know, I wrote Saving 9, started writing it about a year ago because I started seeing what was about to happen. I realized that the Supreme Court was going to grant or had already granted review in the Dobbs case. And I started predicting that they might overturn Roe versus Wade because Roe versus Wade is bad law. It finds no foundation whatsoever in the text, history, structure of the Constitution. And so I thought the Supreme Court might well overturn it, as well it should. I then started predicting, wait a minute, if that happens, this is a sacrament to the left. The left is going to try to demonize, denigrate, and isolate the Supreme Court, and they're going to try to pack it. So I realized nobody else had done an exhaustive explanation of this. No one has written a book, to my knowledge, about court packing and about the impact that it had the last time Democrats tried this in 1937. This book does that. Look, when you buy Saving 9 and read it, you will never lose another political argument in your life. Not just about the Supreme Court, but about the separation of powers between the three branches and the relationship between the states and the federal government, all of which were changed for the worse in 1937 when the Supreme Court buckled to Roosevelt's demonization and intimidation of the court. This time it could be much worse. We have so much more to lose today, and it will, I fear, whether it succeeds or fails legislatively, as in 1937, it will inflict irreparable harm on our system of government. And so I'd encourage all of your viewers to go out and buy Saving 9 today and read it.
It's a very important book. Saving 9, the new book out from Senator Mike Lee today. Get it where books are sold. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. Congratulations on the book, and thank you for your defense of natural rights. We're grateful.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.